This lesson is called For Loop Fun. In this lesson, we'll use a number line to play a dice game. Each player will roll 3 times to assign our starting value, our stopping value, and our interval. During each turn, we circle our starting value, then every value that is the same number of steps forward as our interval value. We stop circling when we get to our stopping value. The person with the highest score wins. For loops can come in handy a lot of places. And if you were to become a meteorologist, you'd use for loops all the time.
Hello, outstanding kids. Welcome to yet another exciting ICT Unplugged activity class. Today we are going to be looking at for loop fun. Now, when we say for loop fun, in this class, we will be looking at the meaning of loop, nested loop, and also we will look at the counter block. Now, when we say loop, we all know what loop is. It means doing an action again and again, over and over again. Instead of us to use one method of programming, we just apply loop, which is repeating an action. Loop make our program to be shorter, using fewer blocks, and make it easier for us to understand. Loop can also be seen as a repeated action used to code larger program. When maybe we have a program to move a certain command forward 500 times. Now we just apply loop. Instead of us to be putting move forward 500 times, we just use the repeat block and put how many repeats we want it to be, which is loop. Now we know that the repeat block is a block that is used to apply loop in the program. The amount of times that needs to be repeated is placed inside the repeat block where you see 4 now. You can just change it to whatever number of times that you need to repeat an action. Now we are going to be looking at the for loop fun. Now the for loop fun is different from the loop. The for loop is a different kind of loop. The loop that has a predetermined beginning, end, and it even have an interval, which is increment. Now, in the normal kind of loop, which is the repeat, you only put how many times you are repeating. But in the for loop, you can be the one to determine where your loop is going to start from, how many interval will be within the loop, and where your loop is going to end. Now, the for loop repeats command a certain number of times, but also keeps tracks of the values that needs to be repeated over and over again. Now, in as much as the repeat block is placed, the for loop block helps to know how many number of times a command is given. The for loop block helps to give it a predetermined beginning, an increment, and also an end. Now, for example of a for loop block, a for loop that begins at 4 and ends with 8 and has a step value of 1 will repeat 4 times, but the value 4, 5, 6, and 7 will also be captured for use anywhere else. Now, we have a block that is used for for loop, and this block is called the counter block. Now, if you look at the counter block, it has 3 different variables attached to it. The first variable that we can see here is 4. The second variable that we can see there is 10. And the last variable that we can see there is 2. Now, this block is a variable that keeps track of the numbers that controls the loop. It has a start and a stop value that helps in counting. Now, if we look at the labeled part of this, our diagram, we'll see a starting value, a stopping value, and even a step value. Now, when we say the starting value, This is the value the counter will start from. If you are going to be using a repeat, you say, I want my variable to start from 10. And you say, I want this to stop at 100. And the intervals between 10 and 100, I want the intervals to be 5. So when it counts 10 from 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, it will tick as one variable, one value. From 15 to 20 will be value number 2 because it's counting at interval of 5. From 20 to 25 is value number 3. From 25 to 30 is value number 4. That is how it keeps on repeating till it gets to the stop value, which is what? 100. So the stop value, this is the value that the counter will end when we loop. And when the loop stops, it stops at the stopping value. While the step value, this is the amount needed to the counter each time the loop runs. Just like as I've explained, the number of times that you place in between the start variable and the stop variable, that is what the step interval is talking about. Now, looking at this picture, we can see it says for counting a variable, the player begins by identifying the number that we can start counting from, and also the number that the player will stop. If we look here, you see that they wrote for values of x, we start from 2. That is why 2 was circled here. It will start from what? 2. And it will end in where? 10. So 2 was circled, 10 was also circled. And the interval is what? 4. So from 2 to, if you add 4 to 2, will be 6. And if you add 4 to 6, it will be what? 10. So we calculate. 2 plus 6 is what? 8. 8 plus this 10 where it stopped, because it gives us what? 18. That is why we see that our total number for player 1 is what? 18. Now let's go to the second one. It says that this interval will begin at 3 and is to stop at what? 16. And it should count by 4. So the starting point was circled 3 and the ending point was circled as what? 16. Now from 3, if you add 4 to 3, it will give you 7. If you add 4 to 7, it will give you 11. If you add 4 to 11, it will give you 15. So we are going to add all these variables minus the stop variable. Let's count. 15 plus 11 plus 7 plus 3 gives us what? 36. So this is how the counter variable works. Afterwards, the player also predicts how many steps it will take for the countdown to count down the number, which is the intervals, like we have said. It is the player that determines when you have a predetermined beginning and when you also have a predetermined ending. Now we're going to watch a video of a practical class on how to use the counter block. Now this video will help us to understand more on the for loop.
Okay guys, for our lesson today, we're going to play for loop fun. And this is a dice game. So we are going to get together in pairs and we're going to roll dice and we're going to learn how to use for loops. So first we need to talk about what a for loop is, because a for loop is different than kind of loops we've used before. So what do you remember about a loop? Yes.
It's something that repeats over and over until you tell it to stop.
A loop is something that repeats and you get to tell it when to stop, right? So we might have a loop, and in CS Fundamentals, we call it a repeat block, right? Mm-hmm. So we might repeat something 5 times, And the thing that we repeat 5 times might be something like move forward. Now, when we repeat something 5 times, we go through, and it's kind of like it's keeping track one at a time. So it'll have a variable, if you remember that from when we were talking about the bracelets or the sun catchers. Then we can have a variable that starts out at 0 times, and it'll go through and it'll say 1, and it'll go through and say 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then it'll be all done. So that's how this is going to work. But there's a more powerful loop out there that we're going to learn about today, and it's called the for loop. Now with a for loop, we get to choose where it starts. Maybe we want it to start at 0. Maybe we want it to start at 3, right? So we have a for loop, and then we have a variable or a counter of some kind. And we're going to say, for our counter, and we get to say where it starts. So where do we want our counter to start? Yeah.
Start at 10.
Let's have it start at 10. So we're going to have it start as equal to 10. And then when do we want it to stop? So
At 30.
okay. So when the counter is equal to 30,
Why did you write 2 equals?
that's a very good question. So what I'm doing now is called pseudocode, and it's kind of like what a computer would use, but it's more Englishy. So when I do this, it means set that equal to 10. When I do this, it means compare to see if it's equal to 10. So it's 2 different kinds of equalses. And now what do we want to add by? Do we want to count by 1s, or do we want to count by something else?
5s.
Count by 5s. That's awesome. So that's going to be our loop. And while we're running our for loop,
What do you put stuff in variables?
you put stuff in variables so that you can change what happens throughout your program and still use the same word to refer to whatever that number is going to be. Because we don't know at any given time what the value of this is going to be. We only know whatever that value is, we need it. So for this, we're going to say counter. Now, are we actually going to say counter, counter, counter? No. This is kind of like chorus, where it means something different than what we're reading, right? So to start out, the first time through, what are we actually going to say? Go ahead and shout it out.
5, 10.
Oh, wait. Where are we starting?
Oh, 15.
Okay. No, the first time through, we're going to say,
10.
and then the second time through,
15.
and then,
20. 25. 30. 35.
oh, where do we stop?
30.
There you go. Okay? So that's how a for loop works. It lets you choose your start point, your end point, and how much you count by. We call that the increment. Can you guys say increment?
Increment.
Increment. It's like increasing, right? But we're increasing something by the same amount over and over. And that's how we're going to play this game. Dang it. Okay. It is a dice game. So you've got this grid that you're going to play with, and you're going to play with a partner. And you're going to roll 1 dice, and you're going to find out what your starting number is by the value of the 1 dice. And then you're going to roll 3 dice, or the same die 3 times, and add them all up, and that's going to be your ending number. And then you'll roll to see how many you count by. You'll go through, and you'll circle all the numbers as you go through by adding them all up and having the highest score. Yeah.
What if your counting number can't add up to your ending number?
then you do the last counting number before you get to the ending number. Okay? All right? So let's try this, and I'll come around and help on the first round. There are 3 rounds you get to play, and there's an example if you want to see how other people play it. Okay? So you're going to do your first roll. Here, take this. Okay, so write a 4 there. And then make a little bracket around the 4 so you know that's where you're starting. There you go. And now you have to roll 3 times.
Okay, why 3 times?
Because you have to get a big number, a high number, to know what your ending number is.
2.
So it's 2 plus 4 plus
6.
2 plus 6 plus 4. So what's 2 plus 6 plus 4? What's 6 plus 4?
10.
What's 10 plus 2?
12.
Okay.
it's
So now
12 right
do
here.
one this direction around the 12. So that's how far you get to go. Now you have to figure out how many you get to move by.
Okay, how
So-
many do I?
So write your 12 here. Okay, you have to roll one more time. One. Ooh, that's a good roll.
It is.
So you put a 1 there. So now, here's a,
Thank you.
so now circle 4. And now circle every number, add 1. Add 1. Add 1. And then you have to add all those up together, and that's your score for the round. Okay? This game is actually a little bit complicated. So it helps if you have a document camera where you can play around with your class and show them where to start and where to stop. It also helps to take the start number and make a parenthesis around it and the end number and make a parenthesis around it so that you can see clearly when you've gotten to your stopping point.